The International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is your embassy in the heart of Israel, founded in 1980. From our headquarters in Jerusalem through our branches in over 80 nations and yours in Canada, we seek to challenge the Church to take up its scriptural responsibilities, to remind Israel of the promises made to her in the Bible, and to be a source of practical assistance to all the people in the land of Israel.
So if we go back to what I was saying before about the time when the children of Israel were in the desert and they were crossing over and God was giving them clues as to what they were going to get when they got here, He told them also, apart from the 7 species, what they were going to eat. He also gave them clues about water. They were coming from the land of Egypt where water had never been an issue. The river Nile flowed from the plains of Africa and they always had plenty to drink. However, obviously water during the desert was a very, very big issue for them and they wanted to know what was going to be. So what does God say to them in Deuteronomy chapter 11? The land you're about to enter and possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come. There the grain you sowed had to be watered by your own labors like a vegetable garden. But the land you're coming into is a land of hills and valleys which soaks up its water from the rains of heaven. They are being told that there is no original source of water into this land. All their water comes from the rains of heaven. And therefore, what is it showing? It is showing their dependence on God. So if we go back a few thousand years and we think about this, children of Israel, they cross into the land, what is the first thing they're told? That the manna has stopped and they have 1 year to live off the crops produced by the Canaanites. And after that, a nation which has been shepherds for for the generations is now going to become farmers. What are they going to start cultivating? The 7 species. How are they going to do it? They're going to have to become farmers and start working the land and creating the land. So what do they do for water? Originally, I would assume they went up and down to the valleys to collect the water. But after a while, they put their heads together and they came up with what we like to call the first Israeli startup. Okay, first Israeli startup is this hole here, which it echoes. This is not actually a well. Okay, this is not a well. This is what is described as a water cistern. The water cistern you are looking at is a couple of thousand years old. When we founded this nature reserve over the 625 acres, they found 40 to 50 of these water holes over the area. It was basically proof that this area, which we know was halfway between Tel Aviv, the port of Jaffa, the Via Maris, and Jerusalem, this area was basically a bed and breakfast for pilgrims. This was an area where people came halfway. Nowadays it takes an hour from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Back then on your donkey it took a couple of days. This would be an area where they would stop, have a drink, have a rest before they carried along their way. So these holes, what were they? They were dug deep into the ground. This area here, what's called the lowlands, has very soft rock. It's very easy to dig. The top layer is very hard. This is a rock which has been placed on top. Yeah, the whole area is limestone. Yeah, which makes it very soft. They would dig down. If you think about the hole, this hole here is just the opening. The hole underneath is a large bell-shaped hole which probably covers this entire area here, and it will be plastered so that the water doesn't leak out. Okay, now how are we going to get the water in? Well, I have stood here on a rainy day with the rain pouring. They would dig channels down the hillside. You see the water is never, the hole is never located at the top of a hill. So you imagine putting a bottle out in the rain, very little water goes in. It is halfway down the hill and channels would be dug and the rain literally pours down this channel and there is a hole here and it pours into the hole. And this is what we have here. Joseph was thrown into a hole, a pit without water. He was thrown into one of these pits which hadn't been maintained and then the water leaks out. And there's no way anybody can get out of these. These can go down as far as 20 feet and hold hundreds of cubic meters of water.
What's at the end of this rope?
At the end of this rope, you want to see what's at the end of this rope? Okay, you're going to be Rebecca now.
Okay.
Okay, you're my Rebecca. Rebecca pulls up the water. You're pulling up the water because Rebecca had to pull water. Who does she pull water for? For Eliezer and all his camels. When Eliezer came wandering to look for a wife for Isaac, Abraham sent Eliezer on a long journey through the desert.
The rope is wet.
The rope is wet. Keep going. Okay. This is good water. Okay, it's fresh water.
Use this for an animal. It's rubber.
Now it's rubber. Originally it would be animal hide. This is good water. This is water that's gone into this hole in the last few weeks in the rains that have come. And this water would be water for a community living on this hillside. It would be water for drinking. It would be water for their crops. It would be water for their cattle. And obviously the nature of this water is when it's been sitting here for 8 months at the end of the summer, It doesn't taste so good. I want you to think about the nature of a land which doesn't have a drop of water for 8 months, okay? Which is dry, dry, dry. It's very hard for you to imagine it in Canada. But when you live here and you gradually see all the green that you see over the 8 months starts to disappear, everything turns brown, everything is covered in dust. So when do we start praying for rain? We start praying for rain at the end of the Feast of Tabernacles. The first rains generally come around October, November time. So then if you think about Jesus standing on the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, hold on a second, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and he makes his wonderful speech. What does he say? On the last and greatest day of the feast, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, streams of living water will flow from within him." He is talking to the people spiritually, but also physically they are thirsty. A drop of rain hasn't fallen in 8 months. They are thirsty, and he's appealing to their spiritual and to their physical thirst. They are very aware of how much they need, what he has to offer them, what he has to say to them. We know that the water systems and the water holes and the wells feature in many, many stories throughout the Bibles. I mean, I mentioned the story of Eliezer and his camels that came wandering to look for a wife, and they found Rebecca at the well, who then pulled untold amounts of water for the camels. We know that Jacob, this on top of a well would normally be a big stone, okay, called the rolling stone in Hebrew. We know that Jacob came to the well and he wanted to pull water for Rachel, and normally a stone would be so heavy, purposely heavy, so that only a group of shepherds from different shepherds could pull the water, and nobody can individually steal it. But he was so overcome with love for Rachel that with one push he managed to push the stone off and pull out water for her sheep. We know that Moses met Zipporah at the well, and it's no different from nowadays. Nowadays, if you want to go on a date, you want to meet someone, where'd you go? You go to the bar, you go to Starbucks. Where does all the gossip happen? The water cooler. It was no different back then.
100% of what we receive from you toward a project goes to that designation. Through your contribution to ICEJ Canada, you can participate by giving to Bet Singer Children's Orphanage Bathrooms, Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Home for Holocaust Survivors, Israeli Youth at Risk Summer Camp in Canada, Operation Life Shield Bomb-Proof Shelters, Red Carpet Project Women at Risk in Tel Aviv, Shoulder to Shoulder New Immigrant Partner Project, Women's Shelter Project, General Fund, Gift Estate Securities Funds, ICEJ Communication Media Fund.